name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Heavenly Father, we are ever grateful for your inexhaustible gifts, our faith, this fellowship, the friends here assembled, the food we'll share, the ideas that will germinate here. We ask you to give us patience, love, wisdom, and guide us into understanding as we try and grow together in the fullness of our Orthodox faith. Amen.
Thank you, Father. That was Father Nick Greanias from Chicago, well, not Chicago, Kankakee. Thank you, Father. I want to thank St. George's Parish and Mark and Mike and George and the others here who are hosting us. Thank you very much for your hospitality, and we appreciate it greatly. To introduce our first speaker, I would like to introduce you to Argo Georgiandis Pyle, who is she's our secretary. Argo, would you please introduce Father Nick?
Thank you, Bill. We're so happy to have Father Nick Anton here today. And he was born in Chicago. I think everybody knows where that is. And he was ordained in the diaconate January 29, 2023. He has an impressive background, holds a Master's of Divinity from Holy Cross Seminary, a Master's from Boston College, a graduate certificate in leadership for nonprofits from Southern New Hampshire University, and he's officially the Director of Operations for the Assembly of Bishops. We're honored to have him here, and I thought it was great because there was a little paragraph that sums up what your specialty is, which is diplomacy, negotiation, peacemaking, and change leadership. How wonderful. We need all of those things. But please join me in welcoming Father Nick, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Put this thing on. That good? Can you hear me? Yes. No feedback, but you can hear me? Yes. She's the director of Inter-Parish Associations, which is the topic that we're talking about today. So I said, who better to have to help us present than the person in charge of this program. So, Your Eminences, it's nice to see you all, and nice to see everybody. I know I was here last year. And last year we painted a bit of a picture, what it would look like if we cooperated together as parishes on a local level. We talked about the Inter-Parish Association in more of broad strokes. And I'm excited and very honored that you have brought me back here to speak further and also to workshop together on how we can collaborate to ensure that these are successful. I'll start. Maybe we have to do it. Just press the arrow. One more time. Start this little video.
Can we start the video?
Yeah. the video. Go to the next slide. There we go. So a little bit of the background. We'll start off with the background of the Assembly of Bishops, which many of you know. Back in the 60s, SCOBA kicked off the modern movement for Orthodox Christian unity in the country. And then in 2010, after the mandate in Chambézy, all of the patriarchates had gotten together. They decided that they wanted to create these assemblies all over the world with the purpose of doing canonical regional planning that's providing a framework, a plan to a Holy and Great Council for the patriarchates and for all of the bishops at the council to decide what to do next. So that framework could be something from autocephaly, autonomy, to some sort of other idea of governance. The other aspect that we were mandated with as assemblies of bishops was to start doing ministry together, start working together, start formulating how we're going to either combine existing ministries or work together as existing ministries, and also create ministries that none of the jurisdictions had as something that everyone created together and did together. And so it's made up in a big difference between SCOBA and the assemblies. The SCOBA were select heads of jurisdiction, where the Assembly of Bishops are all of the canonical bishops that are active in a local region. So we have 57 as of a few days ago. The Serbian Orthodox Church ordained an auxiliary bishop for Bishop Longin out of now Metropolitan Longin out of Chicago. So we have 57 bishops across all the jurisdictions that are active, and those are the members of the assembly. That's who makes up the Assembly of Bishops. I can do it. Nice. Oops. Okay. So let's go into the Inter-Parish Associations. As we talked about last year, the Inter-Parish Associations are very local, 15 to 25 mile radius. They are the parishes of all the jurisdictions in a particular area. You can't have two inter-parish associations in an area, so you can't have some be like, well, we don't like those parishes, so we're going to form two. You find that 15 to 25 mile radius, all of the parishes are part of that. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about inter-parish associations. In 2018, a study was done by, at the time, the research coordinator for the Assembly, Alexei Krindach, that looked at, across America, looked and studied all of the clergy brotherhoods, all of the local lay organizations that were doing pan-Orthodox work, and tried to identify where were two regions that had the greatest participation. So they chose Akron and they chose Atlanta as the pilot groups, and in 2018, the Assembly, we met in Cleveland, and they decided to move forward with the idea of, it wasn't called inter-parish associations at the time, but somehow getting the parishes to work together on a local level, and that was the mandate. Shortly after that, obviously, we had transitions in leadership at the Assembly, and then we had COVID, so we actually weren't able to launch it until 2021. In 2021, the two pilots began. Akron was much more lay-driven, Atlanta more clergy-driven, but either way, they both moved forward with forming pilot groups. The Atlanta Inter-Parish Association has really flourished, and they actually hosted the Assembly a couple weeks ago, so it was pretty great. We had every breakfast, lunch, and dinner of the Assembly meetings were hosted by a different parish. They came in, we were all at the same venue, but they would bring in the food, bring in their culture, and be able to showcase everything that they were able to do for the hierarchs. And then finally in 2023, this was January 2023, the two groups were able to present what had happened over the past few years as being a group. And shortly after that, we presented to OCL. And OCL gave us our first funding. You guys gave us $1,000 last year, which we are so grateful for. A few months later, we were able to secure a Lilly grant, so we got $1.25 million for this program over a 5-year span. So you guys really are the catalyst and the kickoff for that progress. Of course, that's $250,000 a year and all that. It sounds like a lot of money, but when you're running something this large across the country, it's still, always still looking for additional funds. But that's really where this history came from. That's where we got till today. A few months later, we hired Spyridoula Fotinis, who is now the director of the program. And so she's the one that goes around. She's the one that will talk to you in your local areas when you're ready and willing to start an IPA. So Speedy, you can take it from here. And just tell me next when you want me to click.
Thanks, Father Nick. Your Eminences, Reverend Fathers, everyone in the room, good morning. I can't see you, forgive me, so I'm sure it's very nice to be there, so thank you for allowing me to zoom in. As Father Nick gave a bit of the background, I'm going to offer a little bit more of the kind of building blocks and basics of the inter-parish associations. So as you can see on the screen here, and this was a bit in the video, but just to make sure that everyone kind of understood, an inter-parish association promotes communication, camaraderie, and cooperation across Orthodox Christian parishes of all jurisdictions in a given geographical area. They are local, as Father Nick explained, and the parishes are the members, and their leadership includes both clergy and laity. Their purpose is to break down barriers across Orthodox Christian jurisdictions and as a unified Orthodox Christian community witness Christ's love in local society. So what does that mean? Next slide. So kind of the vision of the Inter-Parish Associations is really to live our faith more fully in our communities. And so this is done by creating kind of this framework to equip and empower parishes to do ministry together and be a living expression of the Orthodox Church in their locale. Next slide, please. And so then the mission is really to witness Christ's love as one body. And this is done as a united cross-jurisdictional body in each locale through multi-ethnic expression, common ministries, and relevance in the local community. So it's really, what is the Orthodox Church and how are we actually being present in our local communities outside our church walls? And so as Father Nick kind of mentioned, really, why are the Inter-Parish Associations this new ministry? And it's because the goal of the Assembly of Bishops is to bring Orthodox Christians closer to Christ and each other. And so through their common vision of the Assembly, it's also to support local Orthodox Christian unity, outreach ministries, and initiatives to enhance common Orthodox witness and to promote organizational excellence. So this ministry is really a great opportunity to really try to fulfill these things. Next slide, please. So to go kind of into the more of the basics, as Father Nick already mentioned, but the idea of the Inter-Parish Association is that it's highly localized. And so that in a local area, the parishes are blessed by their respective hierarchs and guided by the clergy and lay leadership to really create this Inter-Parish Association. And so each parish is a full member and is represented equally by its members, which are the clergy and laity. So the idea is that in an Inter-Parish Association, the parishes in this locale will work together interjurisdictionally to create opportunities for more common worship, witness, fellowship, and internal and external ministries. And so what does internal and external mean? It means that, for example, internally, if there's 4 or 5 parishes in an area, something I'm hearing a lot about that I think we're all aware of is that there are a lot of new catechumens coming into our parishes. And so some of the clergy are overwhelmed because they have already a lot of responsibilities and things happening. And so some areas across the country have found that doing shared catechism and rotating the clergy and allowing the catechumens to kind of rotate parishes allow the clergy to have a bit more balanced schedule of catechism and allow the catechumens to experience different Orthodox parishes in the local area. So that's an example of internal ministry. And then externally, it's really looking outside, again, the church walls and seeing what is the need outside in our local community. Is it something related to feeding or mental health or housing or whatever the case may be, and trying to, together as an Inter-Parish Association, to really meet that need and work with local partners in that area. Next slide, please. Forgive me. So where we already said, it's an agreed upon mile radius that's easily accessible to everyone in the area. I know in a lot of areas, sometimes it's too far to drive somewhere to another parish, so the idea is that it's highly localized so that everyone can participate as equally as possible and make it more manageable to do so. And so why Inter-Parish Associations and why is it an exciting opportunity? I think it's really an opportunity to shape the Orthodox Church in the U.S. and also really provide this local witness of Orthodoxy in our local area. So right there. Sorry, Mike, 1 second. Father Nick, can you take a second?
Yeah.
I need to grab some more.
No problem. But to piggyback off of what Spyridoula said is why. The why comes from a lot of places. As we know, there was a Holy Great Council in 2016. And what had happened after that is that some churches came and some didn't. Some recognized it, some didn't. And so the bishops coming to the assembly are coming under 2 different mandates. One is Shapazi, one is the Holy Great Council, which is all fine. But the shift, and not knowing when there would be another Holy Great Council, we had a shift from that side of doing it through canonical regional planning, through sort of a plan that would be proposed and then accepted, to how are we going to do this from the grassroots? And that's where the why the bishops decided to do this in 2018, so close to 2016, was that was a shift of mentality. They said, well, we can keep spinning our wheels and creating all these plans, but there's really nowhere to send them to anymore. We don't know when the next Holy Great Council will be. So what else can we do? And this is the way to do it. If we create the groundwork, if we create local areas that could be dioceses one day or whatever else, but really just get the people working together, getting to know each other better, this is the only way to do it. This is the way that we can move forward. So that's why. Just to add a little more color to the why from the history point of view.
Thank you, Father Nick. Sorry about that. Yeah, so adding to that, this kind of how question is then based on our kind of shared Orthodox Christian faith, and then by honoring and being steeped in this deep theological tradition, and then also, as Father Nick mentioned earlier, example in Atlanta, all the parishes were able to share their food and culture, so celebrating these pieces that are part of our orthodoxy and the rich diversity of it, and then understanding how we can together strengthen our individual parishes and create stronger relationships between our parishes to then offer this beauty and witness to our communities, both, of course, our parishioners and also outside of our church walls. So next slide, please. Father Nick, this one is you.
I like the tree. That's why she said this for me. So we have the tree. The idea is that the assembly acts as the roots. We give support to the IPAs. We have Spyridoula and we have other people. We have a strategic planner. I think Spyridoula we'll talk about in a little bit. We have a research specialist, so we'll be doing everything based in research and based in data. At any rate, we provide the roots, we provide the foundation. And you have the Inter-Parish Associations, which brings together, as you can see, the branches, which are all the different parishes from the different jurisdictions in a particular area. And then the leaves are the people. All the people make up the parish. So the branch isn't a branch alone, and the tree doesn't survive without every person in the parish. And so we've tried to put this graphic together to show how everything relates to each other within the IPA system. So you have the people who make up the parishes then who make up the IPA which gains support from the Assembly of Bishops. And then we're trying to figure out a way, we're working with some people, and the whole thing is done in Christ. So somehow we want to put Christ as the overarching aspect to our thing. But this is a design and product, and in process, so we figured it didn't matter. We can share it with you guys. You guys are friends.
Thank you. So as far, next slide, please. That's okay.
There you go.
Great, thanks. As Father Nick mentioned, the idea is that the Assembly of Bishops provides kind of this support for local parishes to do this work. And so in addition to some of the consultants that were mentioned, that I'll get into that a little bit later, it's also the expertise and kind of frameworks and models of the church as a whole. So for example, as I mentioned, as you just kind of said, the Inter-Parish Association acts as this kind of coordinating hub for all the parishes in the local area. And so we will provide different frameworks and models that local areas can decide how they want to structure their leadership. And one of our main kind of suggestions and hope is that this creation of a synergy group. And so what this looks like, as you can see in the graphic, there are different parishes and 3 different people or so from each parish. And so the idea is, since we mentioned equal clergy and lay participation, that there is at least 1 clergyman and 1 to 2 lay people from each parish to represent their parish and come together into this synergy group, which includes the representation from all the parishes in that Inter-Parish Association. And so then this synergy group will be in charge of coordinating kind of the activities and creating further committees or working groups as needed for the work of the IPA. And the hope is also that we're going to kind of give suggestions of who should be part of the synergy group to really kind of try to include the diversity of our parishes in that. I think the next slide, please. Thank you. And so kind of the idea of the Inter-Parish Associations and this process that we are creating, and again, like framework or tools to use for parishes in the local context, are really guided by these 3 different questions. The first one is, who are we as a parish? The second, who are our sister parishes? And the third, who is our neighbor? And so the idea is that the parish itself understands, again, grounded in our faith, what is our parish story and our history, especially in the context of our local community, and then understanding where are we now and where do we want to be in the future, and kind of working with our experts and people in the church that are experts in this to really discern that. And then with taking those lessons, taking it into the second phase, which is who are we as a sister parish, or what are our sister parishes? So in the context of the Inter-Parish Association, kind of doing more of this envisioning of what does it look like to really witness our faith as Orthodox Christians here in our community in this Inter-Parish Association, and really then benefit and enhance the ministries of our churches so that we can all grow closer to Christ and each other, and then also, again, be connected to our community. But as you can see in the second one, it's really this idea of more communal worship and community building through different social events or things that will bring us together. Obviously, Pan-Orthodox Vespers is an example that a lot of us do across the country, and so creating more intentional opportunities for parishioners to really be together and grow together. And again, this idea of what we said earlier, internal ministry, really brainstorming this. So then, once kind of coming together here, again, then looking outwardly, what does it look like to serve in our local communities based on our understanding of us as an inter-parish association and kind of the resources we have and what we can give, and then working with local community leaders to understand what are the needs that need to be met, or where can we partner with other organizations, perhaps ecumenical or interfaith partners that are already doing good work, but then could maybe need more support that we could offer. And so also kind of the funding for some areas that it will go as micro grants to really support this implementation and ideation of outreach ministry in our communities. Next slide, please. So as we mentioned a little bit, the idea is that the Assembly of Bishops really provides the support to the Inter-Parish Associations to do this work locally, and it is really driven by the local context, because I'm sure all of you are from different places across the country, and so you know your context best. I'm from New Jersey, I know a little bit of New Jersey, but the idea is that we provide, again, as you can see, these framework and resources, the consultants, the localized support to find what is best fitting for the local context, and really giving you the tools to make that happen. And so there's always dedicated staff support, myself and our other staff as well, and then, of course, really importantly, our hierarchical blessing. So grateful that there are 2 hierarchs in the room as well, and they heard me present 2 weeks ago, so thank you for your patience, Mormoninenses. But also that's really crucial, so really this connection and blessing. And as you can see kind of in the last one there, this national network, the idea is that we will also provide a space, at least monthly, and also other opportunities for inter-parish associations across the country to connect with one another, challenge one another, be spiritually enriched, and provide opportunities to grow more together, to really share what's happening across the country. And so that's something we're currently working on too, is just sharing these best stories, or radiant stories as we're calling them, across the country of this pan-Orthodox collaboration. And so that's really the hope, that it will inspire each other to really do this work.
To add
next
just
slide,
a little bit to what Spyridoula had said, is in doing this within the framework of proper ecclesiology is a very important part for what we're trying to do. So for example, when we start an inter-parish association, as Spyridoula said, the parishes are members. So we're not just taking like a clergy brotherhood and saying now it's an inter-parish association. The parishes have to be members. So we're getting letters from each parish saying we want to be part of this. We want to do this, we're all joining, we're being part of it. At the same time, we're an hierarchical church with ecclesiastical authority. And so we're also going to the hierarchy, and the hierarchs are writing letters, giving their blessing and giving their encouragement to the parish to be part of this. So the parishes individually are empowered by their bishops to be part of this, but then the parishes, as a parish, maybe through the parish council or whatever their process is, because each jurisdiction does it a little differently, they're then sending a letter signed by the priest and perhaps whoever the lay representative is, in a lot of places as a parish council president, to us. We have copies of those on file, and everybody forms it in this way. So we're doing everything, through the proper ecclesiology, but also through good governance as well.
Yeah, as Father Nick just mentioned, it's just to kind of give an idea of what these kind of steps look like. If there's interest in inter-parish associations in a local context, usually people submit an intent form or get in touch with me or Father Nick somehow. And so with that, we do an initial conversation about what does the collaboration look like on the ground currently, to give us a better mapping of the local context. And with that, usually then it is, as you see here, this defining of the locale. So where are people willing to drive, how many parishes should be included, and then really trying to find the right structure for that. So for example, in New Jersey, in northern New Jersey, there are about 40 parishes, which are a lot of parishes. So we've talked about perhaps having like satellites of the larger IPA. So there are different ways to structure it, so to make sure that people are included and are part of an inter-parish association and can actually be, again, localized in their ministry. And as Father Nick mentioned, the idea is that we obviously meet with clergy and laity, make sure that all the clergy are on board and know what's happening in that local area, and give them the right information and tools to be able to go back and share it with their parish councils or the equivalent, and to really talk to their parish about the inter-parish associations. And so, Father Nick mentioned, we then go to the hierarchs of that local area and ask for the letters. And as you see again, the letters are submitted by the parishes, and then we go through this process together of appointing the synergy group representatives and then kind of planning the next steps. And those steps are really to start thinking about a launch event of the Inter-Parish Association, and then really set up a focus group as part of the research, and then based on the local context's needs and kind of where they're already at, discerning what is the next process. Is it kind of the strategic visioning? Is it something else, or being connected to another area or expert in the church that does something of where they're at? So that's kind of just the steps, so people have that as a background. Great, and so finally we're just going to present so people can see, and if you know people in the area, or if you see an area that you're located in, kind of where inter-parish associations may be. And so this is kind of our hope. So I just wanted to share the active interest. This means I'm currently in communication with these areas. We've gone back and forth, either met with their clergy brotherhoods online, and or lay members who then bring in the clergy, and had a lot of initial conversations. So these are the areas where right now they're speaking on the ground with their parish councils or equivalent, and trying to gauge what is the interest and how many parishes are interested in participating. So I don't think I need to read them, but we'll just let the slides sit there for a minute. I don't know, Father Nick, if you want to add anything.
I'll just say, as it sits there, in every place that we go, we meet them where they are, we figure out where they are. So for example, what we find is a lot of places we go in and they say, oh, we're already doing this, we're great, like whatever. And then I would say there's probably one area we found that to be really, really true, and that's Worcester, Massachusetts, right? That's this one? Yeah, so the idea here, and I can use them as an example, their bylaws, it's not a clergy association, their bylaws have the parishes are the members, the parishes have been doing it, they have a cemetery, they have a nursing home, they have a number of things that minister to the broader community, right? So it's not like we get together and have Vespers once a year, twice a year, maybe do something here and there, maybe have a food thing, here and there. It's much bigger, and that's what we're envisioning, really, the parishes leveraging their power together to really do something in their local society, so that when people think, when the mayor of that town says, oh, I know the Orthodox Church, they're the ones who decreased homelessness by 10% in a year, versus, oh, I know the Orthodox people, they have great gyros at the festival, or great things at the Serbian festival, or Greek festival, or other ethnicities. We want the Orthodox Church to be a formidable force in our societies, because that's what it means to be living our faith and to be witnessing Christ in our societies. It's not an insular thing. It's an outward-looking thing. Christ didn't just stay in Bethlehem his entire life, right? He went out and he ministered to all the people everywhere. So that's, for example, now Northern New Jersey, they have a lot of great inter-Orthodox stuff. They just started, and we just got the letters. Archbishop Nathaniel was just telling me he just sent his letters yesterday. I just asked for him a couple days ago. But we're getting all the letters in place. They're at that phase where they're getting the hierarchical letters. The parishes are ready, and they're going to move forward quickly after this. So they're all over the place, from just starting to think about it, to having their letters, to really already have been doing it for many, many years, and we are finding a way to incorporate them into the network and into the process. So we're not looking to try and recreate anything that already exists. We want to see where people are, and we want to work with everyone from that point.
Just add, like maybe some of you know Minneapolis or St. Paul, the Twin Cities are also known for their Pan-Orthodox collaboration. They have a Pan-Orthodox camp, have incredible ministries they've been doing for years. So to that point, Worcester and Minneapolis, St. Paul are a bit further along, and so they'll be kind of perhaps what we're calling right now like mentors, or providing these kind of best practices, but then being grouped together to think about, okay, what's next? Because even in those areas, they're thinking about sustainability of leadership and what that looks like. So to Father Nick's point, we meet people where they're at and then try to connect them with the right resources and people to support them in their journey. Yeah. So these are future interests, meaning we've had initial conversations. They said maybe later, but keep us posted. And so these are kind of, I just follow up every once in a while to ask them where they're at, but these are kind of the future interest areas, are currently in progress, having more kind of communication, trying to get more people on board and gauge the interest.
And I'll add one thing here. For those who, I know a lot of people are business-minded and all that, these are the early adopters, and these are the people who are waiting to see how it goes from the early adopters before they fully adopt. That's kind of from a business perspective, that's where we are, and that's what these slides mean. In nonprofit terms, we just call it future interest, but in the business world, that's the trend. So Somewhere that probably will move off this list soon is Denver, because we're going to Denver for our assembly meeting next year, so that will be an opportunity for us to work with them and have them form their IPA and have that IPA host the meeting. So they'll probably get on the fast track, and we'll be working very closely. I'll be personally working with them very closely because it works out so well with Atlanta. Anywhere we host it from now on, we're going to try to make sure that it's an IPA that's hosting it. Is everyone good? I don't want to move on until everyone felt they've read the slide. And if these are any of your areas on either slide, your support is very, very much welcome. Talk to your priest, talk to the other laity in your parish, and say, hey, let's move ourselves into the early adopter group. Let's go talk to Spyridoula. We can always, we're always ready for anything.
Because as you can see, our initial interest, so they spent intent forms in the beginning. Father Nick talked to them before I came on. We have not heard back from them, or also recommendations, which are on the right side. So if you are, again, in these areas or know people, I will say Cincinnati, Ohio, just this week, we started having kind of conversations. So, and also, so just as an FYI, but yeah, these are kind of those areas that were initially interested, lost touch, or were recommended.
Right, yeah, either lost touch or the interest wasn't strong enough to, from all the parishes that area to start it. It can't be like 1 or 2 parishes when you have 12. We have to have like a critical mass before we can really start one. All right, so that's
it.
The last slide. So I'll just wrap it up by saying what I've said sort of along the way is that I think the power of collaboration, especially with OCL, is your strong network of go-getters in the parishes, right? That's what we need. In any of these areas, this is clergy and laity together. This isn't going to be just clergy running this. This isn't going to just be lay people running this. This is everybody together. And so having strong lay people that can go, let's say to their clergy and say, hey, we ought to go together. We put it in an intent form or just email. It doesn't have to be through the intent form. Just get in touch with us. We'll get in touch with you back, and Spyridoula will run with you from there. Really having that support and that ability to move things forward. The other side of it, is over time, we want sustainability of any of these programs. So ultimately, to sustain this program, it would be something like a $5 million endowment. I'm not saying I'm asking anybody to raise that. I'm just putting it out there that that's what our goal is over 5 to really 10 years, because we're likely able to get an extended, a continuation in order to get to that point. But if we want to look in sustainability as far as financing, we have to stop looking at like asking for money to meet our budgets. We have to start looking in the sense of how do we make this go on. $5 million a year with proper investment can yield roughly $250,000. That's about what it costs to run this program, at least right now. And I think it's a pretty sustainable number. So you could probably say it differently. But anyway, long story short is over time, we don't want to just be looking at starting these. We want to be looking at how are we going to keep this going forever, because this isn't going to be 5 years or 10 years to accomplish this. We're talking about a very large country. This needs to happen methodically and slowly over time. So the ways that we can always collaborate, the ways that we can talk about that obviously throughout the day and throughout the workshops. And I'm very excited to even hear, like, as you go through the workshops, ways that you would suggest to us that we collaborate, because that's what we're looking for. We want it to be very participatory. We want everyone to express what they want to express, and so on and so forth. So that's it for the presentation. I think maybe we can just do, I don't know how many minutes are left, 5 or 10 minutes? Oh, 15 minutes, okay. Maybe 10 minutes of a little bit of questions with just me and Spyridoula, and then I think there's a panel where we'll bring up Metropolitan Nicholas and Archbishop Nathaniel so that we can all continue to field some more questions for the next half hour on that panel. Father,
I think you want us to come to the microphone for the questions so people can hear them online or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense, yes.
Yeah, I'm Father Nick is one of the 2 initial places. It's a very large metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, on some of the lists, you had downtown Chicago and Glenview, Illinois, which are, only 20 miles apart, if that much. Kind of indicates that for the really big metropolitan areas, there's a certain virtue in dividing it up. I mean, to have the whole of Chicago, for instance, as one group might be too big and too unwieldy. Is that your thought? And how has Atlanta worked? Because Atlanta is really one of the biggest metropolitan areas in the country. Right.
So Atlanta being one of the pilots, we've learned a lot from that process. And what we learned is that it really needs to be very local. Now in Atlanta right now it's working, I mean, for what they're doing in their area, and they're able to get together. But we've learned that if we really want to make that impact in an ultra-local area, it's too widespread. So when we're looking at Chicago even, let's say, taking that example, I know a lot of people in the room know Chicago, but we've talked about, we haven't figured it out yet, we're going to work with OCCA, everything potentially west of 9094, so even when you're talking that locally, versus east of 9094, versus north and south. So even splitting up the super local areas, it's about the parishes and what they're dealing with in that local area and how close they are. So the ideal size of an IPA is like 5 to 10 parishes. Then there's going to be other areas where you have 2, because there's not going to be another parish around for a very long time. So yeah, our idea is like when you have a huge metropolis area, the idea that like the OCCA, right, spans over states. It's basically any of the clergy across all the states. We don't want that. We want it for the IPAs, it needs to be broken down into much closer regions. If you're in the western suburbs of Chicago, you're dealing with very different issues than if you're western, not suburbs, just western neighborhoods of Chicago, and sort of the north neighborhoods of Chicago versus the south loop neighborhoods of Chicago. These are very different issues, and those parishes need to handle those things very differently versus coming together. What ends up happening when you make it too big is you might find a particular area, and then everyone's sort of working on that area, but their very local areas are getting neglected then. And we don't want that.
So is Atlanta proving to be too big?
I don't know. I mean, we're still figuring that out. I think when we were down there, it didn't seem too big. They seemed to be working well together in that size. But I would say if we had done it differently from the beginning, we might have split them up into 3 or 4. But I don't know that it's because they're not doing a good job. It's just the idea that we might have done things a little bit differently, which is why we're starting to do them in this other way. So this whole process is a lot of this process is learning. This is something new. We've never done this before in this way, this concerted effort where parishes are members, right? It's always been sort of the clergy in an area get together for coffee, maybe it turns into something, maybe they have a program here and there, but we've never done it where like the Assembly or SCOBA or any of those bodies ever said, hey, we're going to organize this and do this. Spyridoula, it sounded like you had something to add?
I think you covered it, but I was just going to say, to your point, like in Atlanta we've learned a lot, and we've done 2 focus groups with them, and so we learned a lot from that as well, that although they are doing a lot of really great things, and the IPA kind of pilot a lot for better collaboration, there's always room for more, right? And so I think it was really interesting to hear about the specific things each parish was dealing with, and then some people were kind of aware of the collaboration, others were not. So I think there's still a lot of work, that's what we learned. So perhaps to your point, maybe the distance is a lot, but that's part of the hope that as Atlanta is also part of the network and learning and growing with other IPAs, we can adjust or they can find what works best for them. But to follow Nick's point, it seems like they have a cohesive group that is trying to work together as best as possible amidst the traffic issues. So I think, yeah, it's a learning process.
And even in some of the areas that are formulated right now, we've been talking with them, they want to start a little bigger because that's where they've been working together, but they already recognize that as they're probably going to split into smaller IPAs as they go. So it's not like one or the other. Like I said, we want to work with people where they are, and that's how we're starting. Yes, Bill.
Well, I want to congratulate you on this initiative. It's a very sensible and great step towards working together closely, especially in the local proximities. In Atlanta, because we were there a couple of years ago, and it was a very interesting experience, but yeah, I can see what you're saying. That was spread out for, what, 40 miles or so apart? How many parishes are in the Atlanta IPA, and how many aren't, I guess is the other question, for starters.
You know that answer, Spyridoula? I want to say 17.
How many?
I want
I'll check if I can find it.
I want to say 17 parishes. I think the vast majority are. There might be 1 or 2 parishes that really aren't participating. In a lot of areas, because of the mandate of the patriarchy, some of the local parishes won't participate directly as a member, but I know that they still work together behind the scenes and things like that. So in some of those areas, we have some things like some 1 or 2 here and there. But typically, I think in Atlanta, they have most of the parishes. Yes. And if she gets more accurate numbers, we'll come back to that. So she can give you the exact numbers.
All right, I found it. It's 18 parishes.
18, I was close. 18.
In contrast to Atlanta, could you tell us a little bit about Worcester, Massachusetts?
Mhm.
That's a very different
Right.
experience. How
Totally
how
different.
does that I'd like to know a little bit more how that looks.
Sure. You want to?
In Worcester.
Yeah. Worcester.
Yeah, and I'm still learning about them. We're in conversation, but it's the, how do they call it? The Central Massachusetts, like Orthodox Christians Council of Central Massachusetts. And so I believe it's from the 80s, if not the 70s, where they kind of had this vision already to collaborate and do things together. And so, as Father Nick mentioned, from the beginning, their bylaws were built that each of the, I believe it's 13 parishes there, are members. And it's really interesting because they also write that the group will exist until unity is reached in the United States of the Orthodox Church, or like if then their need will cease to exist, that group. So they already had the vision from the very beginning that this is kind of the goal towards unity. What they also, I learned, is that they have, yes, as we mentioned, the cemetery, this pan-Orthodox nursing home, which is really amazing. And so they actually, the council there in Worcester is incorporated as a 501c3, so they can actually then fundraise and promote the ministry work that they do. Apparently also, I believe in the 80s, there was a men's group and a women's group, and they owned a swimming pool for the community. I don't think that's the case anymore, but there was some really interesting history that we're continuing to learn, and we'll actually be doing a focus group with them in November to learn a bit more about this history. But I know right now, for example, unfortunately, some of the leadership changed and lapsed, so they're in this kind of period of seeing, okay, what do we do next? The nursing home is still going, the cemetery is still going, what is the next kind of need? I hope that gives a little bit of a picture, but I'm still learning more about them too. So if others in the room know more, please share.
So they're like a model.
They're like a model, yeah, and really they were visionaries. They were doing exactly what we're trying to do now in the 80s. And then it still continues today because they have operational things that they have to continue, right? They're not going to let that go.
Do they have any record of the impact in the community?
I'm not sure. I think the focus group will help get some of that. We have a really great researcher. He's a professor at Boston College, Dr. Tom Cray. He does their internationals. I was going to give you the full bio, but he's one of the top researchers at Boston College, and he's on this project with us. And so when we do these focus groups, he's going in with really, really top scientific methods. And so we're learning a lot about the history. Some of the ones that are just starting out, we're learning about where they are and figuring out where they're going. When we learn about where they are for Worcester, we're going to be learning a lot about this history and see if they have any data that they can provide to us, things of that nature. So we're hoping to get some of that, like Spyridoula said, in November when we start that research, the focus group research process with them. Atlanta was a bit different. Atlanta had a clergy brotherhood that was pretty strong. They were doing, which I think is the model around the country, where they're doing a few things, maybe Vespers on Sundays through Lent, maybe a Sunday of Orthodoxy, maybe occasional lecture or something like that. And so we went to them and approached them about taking it to the next level. So they then made this a committee of their clergy brotherhood. So right now, we're working with them to move towards the parishes being members. Again, this was a pilot group, so we didn't understand that back then, that we wanted it to be parish membership. We just figured be self-organizing. We've learned that by us providing some guidance, it actually we're able to structure it in a way that can prove for success. But there's still a committee of the Clergy Brotherhood that are starting to do more things together. They were able to come together and host, like I said, the Assembly of Bishops meeting, which was very large. They've added a number of programs to what they're doing. But I think as they start to get more involved in their local communities, that's where they might find they're a little bit too large. And they might, at that point, need to split into a number of IPAs in order to truly impact their very local area. So they're not really at that point of outreach yet, but they are at the point where they're breaking down the barriers between their parishes, and that's going really well.